Physical traits are encoded in small segments of chromosomes called genes, which are passed from one generation to the next. By studying the inheritance pattern of a trait through several generations, the probability that a future offspring will express that trait can be predicted. Hi, and welcome back. In today's biology segment, I'm going to talk about Mendel's law of heredity.
Mendel's law of heredity. Why Mendel succeed? Gregor Mendel, an Austrian monk, carried out important studies of heredity, the passing on of characteristics from parents to offspring. Characteristics that are inherited are called traits. Mendel was the first person to succeed in predicting how traits are transferred from one generation to the next. A complete explanation requires the careful study of genetics, the branch of biology that studies heredity. So, Mendel used for his experiment pea plants. When he wanted to breed or cross one plant with another, Mendel opened the petals of a flower and removed the male organs, as shown in the drawing. He then dusted the female organ with pollen from the plant he wished to cross it with. This process is called cross-pollination. By using this technique, Mendel could be sure of the parents in his cross. Mendel carefully controlled his experiments and the peas he used. He studied only one trait at a time to control variable, and he analyzed his data mathematically. The tall pea plants he worked with were from populations of plants that had been tall for many generations and had always produced tall offspring. Such plants are said to be true breeding for tallness. Likewise, the short plants he worked with were true breeding for shortness. Mendel's monohybrid crosses. What did Mendel do with the tall and short pea plants he selected? He crossed them to produce new plants. Mendel referred to the offsprings of this cross as hybrids. A hybrid is the offspring of parents that have different forms of a trait, such as tall and short height. Mendel's first experiments are called monohybrid crosses because mono means one, and the two parent plants differ from each other by a single trait, in this case, height. So, this is Mendel's experiment. He crossed a tall pea plant with a short pea plant. So, in the F1, this means first generation, all the plants were tall. And in the F2, or second generation, something different happened. There were 3 tall plants and 1 short plant. He studied specifically 7 traits one by one, the ones that you see in this picture. He named dominant the traits that more often appear, and recessive traits the ones that are less likely to appear in the offsprings. The rule of unit factors. Mendel concluded that each organism has 2 factors that control each of its traits. We know now that these factors are genes and that they are located on chromosomes. Genes exist in alternative forms. We call these different gene forms alleles. The rule of dominance. Remember what happened when Mendel crossed a tall plant with a short plant? The first generation offsprings were all tall. In other words, only one trait was observed. In such crosses, Mendel called the observed trait dominant and the trait that disappeared recessive. Mendel concluded the allele for tall plants is dominant to the allele for short plants. Thus, plants that had one allele for tallness and one for shortness were tall. The law of segregation states that every individual has 2 alleles of each gene, and when gametes are produced, each gamete receives one of these alleles. During fertilization, these gametes randomly pair to produce 4 combinations of alleles. So this is what happened. Here we have the law of segregation. So as you can see, here we have the traits, right? Dominant and recessive. Dominants are expressed with capital letter, and recessive traits are represented with lowercase letter. And when they combine, this will be the results. I will explain later on how do we know these exact combinations. Don't worry. Phenotypes and genotypes. The way an organism looks and behaves is called its phenotype. The phenotype of a tall plant is tall whether it's capital T or capital T and lowercase t. The allele combination an organism contains is known as a genotype. The genotype of a tall plant that has two alleles for tallness is two capital T's. The genotype of a tall plant that has one allele for tallness and one allele for shortness is a capital T and a lowercase t. An organism is homozygous for a trait if its two alleles for the trait are the same. The true breeding tall plant that had two alleles for tallness would be homozygous for the trait of height. Because tallness is dominant, a double capital letter T individual is homozygous dominant for the trait. Again, I will explain this. Relax if you don't understand so far. Thanks to the Punnett square, we can understand this topic in an easy way. In 1905, Reginald Punnett, an English biologist, devised a shorthand way of finding the expected proportions of possible genotypes in the offsprings of a cross. So this is a Punnett square. How do we use it? Well, in Mendel's experiment, let's say he crossed two tall plants, and these are their traits. So on the top part of the Punnett square, I place the father traits, and on the sides, I put the mother traits, and then I combine them like this. I take this letter, make up this combination. Then this letter, make up this combination. Now, this letter with this letter make up this combination. And this letter make up this combination. Now, in this case, we have two dominant traits for tall. That means this plant will be tall. Now, what about this one? The plant will be tall or short? I have a dominant here trait for tallness, so my plant will be tall. The same on this one. And in this case, we have two traits for short, so my plant will be small. Now, think about the Punnett square as 100%. If you divide 100% in 4, you have 25%. That means that this is a 25 probabilities that the plant will be tall. How many tall plants we have? 1, 2, 3. If we add that, we have 75%. So my offsprings will be 75% tall. And just one, that means only 25% will be small. Let's make another example. Let's study eye colors. We're going to use the letter B to represent a dominant trait, and letter lowercase b to represent a recessive trait. So, brown eyes are considered to be a dominant trait. Therefore, I'm going to use the capital B to represent brown eyes. And blue eyes are considered to be a recessive trait. So I'm going to use a lowercase b to represent. Now, let's make a fun example. Think about your teacher. I have brown eyes, but my grandfather had blue eyes. Actually, one of my brothers have blue eyes. So, I have a dominant trait for brown eyes, but somewhere in my DNA, blue eyes traits must be there. So in this case, my traits will be represented like this. I have a dominant trait for brown and a recessive trait for blue. Now, imagine that I marry this actor, Chase Crawford, and as you can see, he has blue eyes. So, I will represent his traits like this. with 2 recessive traits. Now, if we got married and we had kids, what color of eyes would our kids have? Let's make a Punnett square to find out. So, on the top, I'll place the genes of the father, correct? And on the side, I place the genes of the mother. And now I start making the combination of traits. This one with this one, this is my result. This one with this one, that's my result. Now this one with this one, that's my result. And this one with this one, that's my result. So, according to this one, what color would the kid be? What color of eyes? Brown or blue? Brown, because I have a dominant trait. The same for this. And in this case, what color would the kid have? Blue eyes. So, what are the results? 50% of the kids will have brown eyes and 50% will have blue eyes. Do you want to look how our kids would look like? There you go. Okay, it's just an example, remember.
I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching and until the next one. Bye!